Microphone check, check, 1, 2, check. Microphone check, 1, 2, 2.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
From looking at that map with these folk, and I know wherever it's too red, I don't need to drive there. I don't ready there. I don't want to. I don't. They help me out really. I don't want to hang there. Literally, I don't want to hang out there. Child, please.
That's exactly what we've been doing. Looking at the map, showing our kids, like, look, you see this? Racist.
And they need to understand that because it's about their safety and longevity.
That's right.
Fortunately, there are individuals who are ready to come over the fence and see really what's going on for real and listen. I think in their hearts, they really are starting to realize that there's a pain that exists in this world that needs to be addressed. And shoot, I might as well just flow into it. We can, this uncut, so
Okay.
so I don't know what's gonna be on here later. So
we unapologetic. That's fine.
Some of your accolades, member of Delta Sigma Theta, doctor, from some of the major cities that were accounted for today and yesterday, Detroit, Cleveland, by way of Cleveland, Detroit, either way, representing Canton as well. Doing major things at minority behavioral health groups. What are some things that are occurring right now? I heard that you are doing something with election trauma or election anxiety right now as we speak.
Yeah, I don't know if people know that it's a thing, like it's a real thing, it has a name. I think people are experiencing it on a regular basis, but they don't know that it's a thing. So election anxiety is what most people, if not all people, are experiencing as a result of the election and just trying to figure out that what's the next steps, what's going to happen, how we're going to be further impacted by everything that's going on. It's quite interesting. The anxiety started with people just making sure that we were getting out to vote and that our voices will be heard. So even with all of the challenges with the mail and the early voting, and it's just been a nightmare. And people are literally losing sleep, tension, headache, physiological responses, and that's anxiety. And it again is directed toward the stress of the election and the fate of people, of our people in our country, given all of the things that have happened over the past 4 years.
Wow. So there's a lot of false securities and insecurities, and people just don't know what to do. What are the age ranges of these individuals? Are the children going through it? Are there voters voting age 18 and up? Like, who's really the most stressed out about this?
I would say young to middle age. I would also say a lot of our elders, but something that's really important that you asked about are the kids. And I would say absolutely. And I don't necessarily work with kids, but I have my own.
Yeah.
So I hear them talk about it and they're on their social media platforms and talking to their peers. And so, yes, they're losing sleep. They want to know what's going to happen. My daughter in particular, she literally observes people and say, that's a Trump supporter. That's a Trump supporter. And it causes her anxiety. Like we were in a Halloween store shopping for a costume. And somebody was standing behind us that she was observing that made her feel really uncomfortable. And she's very insightful. So I accept her observation.
Yeah. That's my little niece.
That's my fact. In the car, she was trying to tell me and her brother, what was happening. And then she said, I know that person is a Trump supporter.
Right.
There's a real fear in her tone, in her voice when she's talking about it, trying to describe it. And so again, this is stuff that they're getting from the media, from their friends, what's on TikTok. And yeah, it's a lot. The kids are definitely impacted.
Oh, it was amazing last night. Jordan stayed up. She's a 7th grader now. And she stayed up watching like it was a basketball game, like LeBron was playing in the finals and watching the take. She's giving us information. I never had the technology as a kid to be able to watch who's winning, We had
That's right.
actually had an opportunity to explain the electoral votes, and it was up until late, almost 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
This child, you know, what I
Yes.
mean, online
Hmm.
learning in Akron, Ohio. You can't get most of these online kids to do nothing else, but they
Nope.
watching the TV trying to figure out
That's right.
something that is influencing their parents. They can feel the influence and
Yep.
the fear. I think it bleeds down on our children when we go through things, and
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a segue into what we initially wanted to talk about, ACEs,
Yeah.
the adverse childhood experience. And when I looked up the CDC, and we've been talking about this COVID-19 thing,
Hmm.
um, but and this is the Centers for Disease Control. When I Google ACEs,
Hmm.
ACEs came up like it was a pandemic, and it's adverse childhood experiences. And I'm looking at this right now, and it's on violence prevention. And I called you a couple of weeks ago because one of the individuals came into our school, and he asked, "Well, would you take the ACE test?" You know, and I heard you talk about it earlier in January of this
Hmm.
year while we were preparing to get our mental health uh, uh, certificates, and being able
Hmm.
to provide certain services from a sports perspective. But I never took the ACEs,
Hmm.
and if I did, I forgot. When y'all might have gave it to me when I was working at Minority, and I may have forgotten. But
Uh-huh.
when I read the questions, I don't think I have ever taken it.
Yeah.
And when I read the questions that he gave me, he just wanted to know my score. He did not want to know the answers.
Hmm.
And I got a high score. Um,
Hmm.
I'll be honest. I like number 7. I got a 7. And
Yeah.
after he had given it to me, he said that the average scores in the schools that he works with, and he travels and he works with predominantly minority children and
Hmm.
children of poverty, the average score is like a 4. So I got a 7. He came and apologized. So once he came and apologized, I'm like, man, I need to call the first doctor I know. I know Dr. I know you and Dr.
Uh-huh.
Glover. So I'm like,
Uh-huh.
man, and Dr. Akita Green, he done moved away. I only got
Uh-huh.
3 doctors and a
Uh-huh.
couple more like in the background. But anyways, Mickey is there. But anyways,
Hmm.
I need to figure out, hey, this guy apologized to me for having this A score. And for those individuals that are watching, and I'll kind of give some of the stuff that the CDC says. What is an A score? Only thing I know about ACEs is spades. What's an A score? Because you had to tell me in the meeting, what's an A score?
Yeah. So ACEs, the adverse childhood experience, actually is an assessment inventory that assess the kind of experiences that we've had as children. And the experiences are traumatic experiences. And so if you have ever experienced any form of abuse, whether that's physical abuse, emotional abuse, whether you witnessed domestic violence or community violence, whether your parents got a divorce or you grew up in a single parent household, whether you lived in poverty or experienced neglect, it's a range of experiences that we experience as children that often get overlooked or not considered, either when we go to the medical doctors or, if we find ourselves in situations where we have to see a mental health professional. These things are not accounted for, which unfortunately leads to African Americans in particular receiving misdiagnoses or treatment that is not appropriate because it's not telling the whole story about how we've been impacted through our childhood and what that really means in terms of a treatment plan or some kind of plan of action that will allow us to kind of overcome and heal from those experiences.
Mm, mm, mm.
So you get a
And
score based on how many times you said yes to those experiences. It yields a score, and the higher your score, the more intense your childhood has been with trauma.
you know what I felt like I did? I felt like because I'm a sucker. So I felt like I gave somebody my credit card information on a phone call trying to sign me up for something. Because I'm like, well, hey, could you take this ACEs test? And I'm like, yeah. So the first question is, did a parent or adult in the household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down? And I'm going to summarize some of these. humiliate you, act in a way that made you afraid, or might feel physical hurt. Who you like, man, you done got cussed out. You as a kid, you done got told you stupid, you dumb, you ain't smart, you just like your daddy. Some of these are insults.
Yeah.
Oh, or adult. So what if it's a teacher and
Yeah.
saying and comparing what you know and making you feel lesser, and you're in education, so you still have to leave this place to come to this place, and you're still experiencing these things. So
Mm-hmm.
so you get numbers for that. So anybody's
That's right.
watching this, you got a one if you say yes. Number
Mm-hmm.
two is this, and I hope people are watching this. Did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you? If you go back about 40, 50 years, man, that's common, man. You might have had an iron, a cup, a spoon. So throw
Mm-hmm.
something at you ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured. A whooping? So whoopings are number two.
Uh-huh.
Number three, did an adult or person at least 5 years or older than you ever touch, fondle, physically abuse you or molested you in any kind of way? Intercourse, valid, so I'm not going to go into that. Number four, did you often, and if you guys are taking this right now, check one if you say yes. Did
Mm-hmm.
you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special? Your family didn't look out for one another, feel close to each other, or support each other. That's number four. All right, number five. Did you often or very often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had anything to wear, clothes, no one to protect you? Let's see. Your parents were too drunk or high that they didn't take care of you, or if you needed a doctor or something. That's number five. Number six. Were your parents ever separated, divorced? And you clarified about most of these. You covered them in general. And that's number six.
Mm-hmm.
Number seven. Was your mother or step parents often or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, abused? All the things they're talking about. Sometimes, often kicked, bitten, hit, fist. You can write that down. That's the one. Threatened by a knife. Number eight. Did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker, alcoholic, who used to use street drugs? Come on, man. Herb is legal now, so I don't know when they made this. Let me see. Number nine. Was a household member depressed or mentally ill, which in our community goes undiagnosed, so you don't even know they're sick or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? Number 10, did a household member ever go to prison? So you
Mm-hmm.
run these things down and you look at the African Americans experience, or
That's
even the brown experience, and or and it's probably percentages of this. We have white brothers and sisters that probably gone through this before, but more commonly, these are experiences that are adverse childhood experiences of people that we know in a high percentage. And to keep them in a certain place, if anybody's watching this and you really want to know the education of it, it's a design for these experiences, but they are a ripple effect of something else that you talked about when I first joined Minority, post-traumatic slave syndrome. Can you highlight that word?
absolutely. Post-traumatic slave syndrome is a syndrome that we, as people of African descent, experience as a result of the trauma, the dehumanization, the devaluation, the terrorism that our ancestors went through the period of enslavement. And so, what I find to be very fascinating is some of the things that our ancestors had to do to survive enslavement. Unfortunately, those behaviors and actions have been translated down from generation to generation, and we still hold on to those things. So, for example, during enslavement, we know our mothers were degrading the children to protect them from the master. We know our mothers were saying, no, they're dumb, they're stupid, they're not smart, they're not pretty, they're not attractive. So they wouldn't be taken and separated from the family. Now, when you mentioned when you were talking when you were reading the ACEs items, that's an item on there. in your home, are you ever told that you're stupid? All of these very negative things that sometimes we say to our children. And again, we don't know the history of where that comes from. It's been passed down from generation to generation. And usually what we say is, hey, that's how I was raised. That's what my grandmother did. That's what my mother did. That's what my aunt, my great grandmother, like that's all we know. And we only pinpointed to the relatives that we experienced firsthand. We never pinpointed back to enslavement, where it came from.
Mm.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome really highlights the behaviors that originated from enslavement. Some of those things that we had to do to survive as
Mm.
men, Black women, to protect our children, to protect our identity and our family. We still do some of those things today, and it's not adaptive because we're not enslaved. Yeah, we still deal with racism and various forms of oppression, but the impact that that has had on us and continue to have on us is why we have ACEs right now. And if we don't begin to consider that or even identify it, then when we're trying to heal and get support and resources that is necessary, it's not going to be fitting. It's not going to be conducive to the process because it's not capturing the real story or the whole story.
So it's not you're not admitting what has taken place, and these are the filters. These are the webs that tie everything together. And you're trying to send this individual out, but you haven't given them the skills to communicate and really understand what happened to them. So it's almost like boil. They say you can if you boil some water, and
Mhm.
you can boil a frog in water. If you put him in the water and then turn it up, he gonna cook.
Mhm.
But if you boil the water before he get in it, and you toss him in it, he gonna jump out.
Jump out. That's
He
right.
gonna jump out. So therefore, in our histories, and for my white brothers and sisters that are watching, and anybody in education, I'm learning right now as well. We have to break away from some of the customary things that we thought were okay to find out some of the liberation we have. That even though we're experiencing the racial traumas of America, there's some windows and doors and gates open for you to have education and to express your thought and your art and the talent. So in songs, if I'm a rapper, if we are powerful, or if I'm a athlete, meet me at the polls. Could you imagine if LeBron James and some of these athletes, and I love LeBron, but any of these athletes were your favorite athletes, if Ben Roethlisberger would have just showed up at the polls, and they don't care whether you Democrat or Republican,
Right.
they would have showed up at the polls. And
Mhm.
then same time, in these different states where these athletes are, who are, they are our gladiators, would stand up and say, man, who is this guy talking to? You just dog football? You just dog basketball? Just for us sticking together? And you're continually trying to separate us. And at the same time, uh, white people experience ACEs too.
Mhm. They
You
do.
know, I got players that are white that go through ACEs, that experience divorce and traumas, and then we find these like moments where, hey, bro, we the same, man. Like, but then when it comes to this politics that we're seeing today, and I know we're going pretty quick, that you have another group to do to deal with that, but
Mhm.
who's going to stand up for the truth? So when I'm looking at this, it says here, if I have a certain score with the ACEs,
Mhm.
there's an ACE pyramid, right?
Mhm.
So it starts from the bottom. And you talked about some generational things. So it says generational embodiment, historical trauma. You talked
Mhm.
about that.
Mhm.
That's the legacy of post-traumatic slave syndrome. Now it's transforming into financial syndromes and trauma, generational financial
Yes.
brokenness,
Yes.
broke pockets and debt, social conditions and local context. So that could be jail or in prison.
Mhm.
Then one, two, three up, adverse childhood experiences. Now you're getting into the brain though. So after all these physical things you can go through, or historical things as far as storytelling, it says disruptive neurodevelopment, social, emotional, and cognitive impairment. Now you get into the brain.
Mhm.
Adoption of health risk behaviors. So now you get in. So once I take your soul and your
Mhm.
spirit, I can control the body. So now once I control the body, now it's disease, disability, social problems. Prison is here again, and
Mhm.
then just early death. And this
Mhm.
week, and those of you that are watching, I hope you get on here. I lost a kid, Davion Pete, man. I had the kid smoking some fentanyl, some bad weed. And I get a text from Coach Joe Bro that he's in the bathtub dead.
No.
We lost another kid that got shot 20 times. In my family, I'm not even going to tell the story. You don't even want to know. You don't even want to know. This week, I work with a kid today. I'm teaching him cornhole. His house got shot up. He's so numb to the situation. He said, my granddad, and this is what he told me. He said, my granddad, they shot up the house. He said, my granddad almost got shot. I'm like, how'd you feel about that? He said, I felt cool. He said, man, I just didn't want my grandma to get shot. I'm like, man, wait, you ain't care about granddad? He's like, yeah, I did, but like, I just see, because the women in the family, you guys are the cornerstone and mama and grandma, you know what I mean? So it's nothing like that. So he already recognizes that that woman, I don't care if it's black or white, that woman goes above and beyond what most males can do. But a black woman, and you talking about aces, and you still have to go to school, you still have to raise the children, you still have to go through all these things and still keep this face. And Camilla she'd get her little face and hey, but they'll judge you on these faces, but at the same time, we go through all this. Another kid got shot twice at our school and during a drive-by, right? And it says violence prevention on this thing. What do you believe? What are the steps do you think that we need to take as far as getting the support we need with these kids? Infant mortality is on here too. So let's talk about infant mortality. You know, I got ADD. Let's talk about infant mortality. Infant mortality, early death at the top of the thing. You don't die no earlier than dying before you've been born. So at the top of this thing here is infant, it's a early death.
Yes.
So infant mortality. Kids is dying before they even get here. Black kids.
Yes, listen. So I'm gonna respond to a couple things you said. And first, I definitely want to make sure we credit our Black sister, Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, who is the Surgeon General of California, who developed ACEs, who recognized that, and here's the thing, you said something that I thought was very important, that it's not just Black people experiencing ACEs, white people are too. That is absolutely correct. The difference is how it's acknowledged and treated and supported. So we have these disparities that you are also talking about on that pyramid, because it's not considered or identified or even treated with Black people, whereas white people, it gets treated, it gets addressed. And so when it goes unaddressed, so when we talk about historical injuries, and now we have ACEs, these adverse childhood experiences, again, that I will say is symptomatic of generational trauma, the reality of that is we internalize those experiences. Internalized racism is real, and that's what you're referring to. So when we're talking about all this trauma that is happening, like what we're doing to each other, it's because we've internalized the racism. We have bought into the idea that we are unworthy. We are not human. We do not deserve the same rights. We are inferior. When we internalize that on a psychological level, not that we're necessarily walking around saying that, but our behavior is demonstrating that because of all of the messages that we have received, not only from our history, but from society. And it just keeps getting perpetuated. So yes, infant mortality is another symptom or another consequence of the pandemic, our historical injuries, the systemic oppression, the various forms of oppression that we experience. Infant mortality is another. What does that mean? It means that babies are born and they do not make it to their first birthday. So they die before they reach 1 year of age. Now, here's the interesting thing, and there's a big disparity in terms of how it happens to Black kids. Black kids die at a higher rate, almost 3 times as much as white babies after they are born. Now, why this is fascinating is because when you look at the medical research, when babies are born, whether they're born prematurely or have a low birth weight, when they are in the hospitals, the medical research will tell you that Black babies do better, in particular, Black girls. So in the hospital, if you have a white baby that's born premature or have a low birth weight and a Black baby, the Black baby is more likely to survive. Now, when it's time to go home, the white baby has a higher rate of surviving and the Black baby has a higher rate of dying. What do you attribute that to, right? That's social environmental conditions, systems of oppression. So when you think about the toxic,
where the baby's going,
where they going,
they
go home to their parents who have high scores on the ACEs, who have all these traumatic experiences of racism, who have never been able to heal or get the natural supports or resources available to deal with that trauma. And we don't know what to do with our babies, and our babies die.
Wow.
That's what happens.
So we put them in an environment to where it's like being the difference between being born in a zoo or born in a jungle. If I'm a lion cub born in a zoo, I'm gonna get everything I need. I got this glass house around me. Everybody gonna come look at me. I got all these privileges. I'm gonna get food every day. If I'm born in a jungle, right, and by the time I hit the ground, I better be able to run. I might be somebody's food. So we talk about the jungle and the zoo. You might want to be born in the zoo. Yeah, that might be a bad example. But hey, I might feel safer if I was Shamu at the zoo than Shamu out in the creek somewhere, man. So
yeah,
early childhood experiences. We also have the historical injuries that you're talking about. Where does the healing take place? Like, what are the resources do we need? Like, where can we go? Do you know, like, anybody watching it? I know Minority has a great program for that. Like, when do we step up? Like, where do we go? If a baby is born, do we stand outside like Trump's people standing outside these voting and selection things? Do we stand outside of hospitals and ask for Black people, hey, I got this program, I can help you out here. How do we help this? Because I know a lot of people, man. I got to keep calling out Pastor Isaac from the chapel. He wants to get these messages out. Like, man, what can we do to create platforms? How do we help? Like, what can we do?
Yeah. So the good thing is there's been a lot of resources recently over the past, I will say 4 years, that we've been receiving from the state. And I like to credit that to Sister Amelia Sykes, who has done a lot of work to make sure dollars came to Summit County to deal with the infant mortality crisis. And that money went to grassroots agencies that are more aware and trained in ACEs and cultural competency that can really capture the full picture of why this is happening. And then put resources in place that's going to be consistent. Part of the issue is that there's all kinds of programs and resources. The first issue with that is it's not always accessible to the people who need them. People are not always aware, or when people are aware and can access the services, then you got to deal with providers who are insensitive and condescending and act like you're taking money from their personal pockets. So we have women who have traumatic responses to going to access the services and resources available to them because you got people providing those services who are not culturally sensitive and who are racist and oppressive, and that just continues to perpetuate the problem. So then what happens? So we have all these resources out here that is evidence-based and said will reduce the issue, but if mothers are not going to be open to going to receive it because they don't want to deal with the stress and hassle that's going to entail, then it's not helpful.
Man, the gatekeeper, that secretary at the front gate, that person behind that window at any organization. I told one of my buddies this week, I want to have any gatekeeper, because even Pastor Dennis got back with me quick. And I don't even know, I had called him a minute ago, I've seen the gatekeepers in churches. I've worked. That gatekeeper is so important because that person is the one that's going to open the door and give access. When you are asking for help, and I've been there, I've been on welfare, I pushed through it, I've been on Section 8, I pushed through it. You wouldn't even know it. And it was only like maybe a cent, a 0.25 cents that you got to be on Section 8 or you need this kind of support. But you in college or you've worked all your life and you work hard and you've given all you got. And the day with all this pride you go into this place, and you got to ask for help, and you sit around people that are at different educational levels. And I don't even like when they call some of these poor white people uneducated. They know something.
Yeah.
Everybody knows something. So they're only saying they're uneducated because they don't have a college degree or a certain level of education, but they know something. I bet you they can put a roof on your house or come and build a sidewalk, or you feel what I'm saying? So
That's
these
right.
poor whites who love Trump, which I wish they understood and would listen, when you go to this place to ask for help and the first person that you meet, maybe it was a black person, which a lot of times it was, or maybe it's a person that has experienced these adverse childhood experiences, or they're so used to seeing a certain type of people and an influx of people who are just trying to get over, they're going to talk to you any kind of way. And I'm sitting here like I'm somebody the whole time. I got to sit through this whole conversation while you looking at me. I'm nobody, but I gotta still continue. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. I got this. I got this paperwork. You need me to go get this? I'm gonna be back. How long I'm gonna have to wait? After a long wait, first off. And I understand. I felt that before. So those people at those gates, I'm thinking like, I got a social work degree, but I'm asking for Section 8. I could fill out an application right now and probably get a job upstairs. So then you
Right.
go through all these doors and windows. So I can feel that. I can feel that. And for anybody watching, if you're a administrator and you're the first person that we meeting, and if God blesses us, and I know He will, if we the first people to open the gate, man, please have the right language and please open the door, because it's already humbling that I got to come here and talk to you anyway. I done been through all this shit in my life, and I
That's
cussed.
right.
I didn't mean to cuss, but I've been through all these aces in my life, and
Right.
now I got to come talk to somebody that's going to push a button,
Mm-hmm.
a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So
Yeah.
I don't want to hold you up. I know you got work to do. What is something you would tell the world today? I always ask this question.
Yeah.
We're about to close out. At about 7:45, I got my godson that's gonna call me from Marion Penitentiary. Um, I want him to. I want to talk to him about some of this too, because he's reading all these
Okay.
books now. So
Yeah.
he got about 8 years. He did too. So what is something that you right now, with the elections going on, all the trauma, what is something you would tell the world today that you were moving? Any woman, any man, anything is the dot.
Yeah.
What's the prescription?
The prescription is, and this sounds very simplistic or very basic, but it's not. And we have to educate ourselves. The miseducation is why we are in the current state that we are in on multiple levels. So not knowing our history, not understanding our experience, we don't have that level of education, then we internalize it in a way that becomes harmful to us. We're not able to overcome or come together and unify or do the things that we need to do to begin our own healing process. So the more we can educate ourselves and remember who we are and where we come from and what our ancestors have done and what they have done to survive. And we know they have, because we wouldn't be here having this conversation if they did not. But how do we go back and reach back into what our ancestors did to survive these heinous terrorist periods of life that they were subsumed to, right? What is it that we do to mirror what our ancestors did? How do we educate ourselves? How do we go back, ground ourselves, affirm who we are, and remember who we are and where we come from? We are not descendants of slaves, and that's the problem. Our first history lesson is that we are descendants of slaves. And when you think about the psychological impact of that, you're setting us up for this whole unworthy, dehumanization, devalue kind of worldview. But pre-enslavement, who were we? Where did we come from? right? And if we can remember those things and reground ourselves in who we are and just keep that education going, raising our level of consciousness, we are going to be in a better position to deal with whatever comes our way as a people and as a community. But it's the miseducation that keeps us stuck and keep us from being able to move the needle forward as it relates to our own liberation.
Thank you so much for your time. I know you only got 15 minutes before you do the election group.
Yes.
We are going to build on this and then go from there. Love you. God bless you. Keep doing your great work. Thanks for your science.
Thank you. I
All right.
appreciate you. This is powerful.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Take care.
Bye-bye.